Hello everyone, my name's Kitetsu and welcome back to my channel. Right, in this video I'm talking about something again very exciting, and as you might have guessed from the fact that this is to do with Morathi, this is going to be something that I'm particularly in love with. Now, if you followed my channel for a while, you will know that Daughters of Khaine are really important to me. My channel really grew off of my excitement for the release of this faction back in the day, and although they've kind of been dropping out of my top 5 since then, a book like this throws them straight back to near the top, and it's like falling in love with them all over again. Now, first of all, apologies for the fact this video is a little bit late. I wanted to bring it out yesterday, but I only received this book from Games Workshop a couple of days ago. It's quite thick, and I didn't want to be one of those reviewers who literally just rushes through it, doesn't really give the material any credit, and yeah, so many times when I'm watching a review, I see them kind of turn to this page here, skip out on over half the book and just go straight to the rules. That kind of breaks my heart a little bit. But yeah, we're going to go through this book. We're going to talk about what it is. I'm going to enter very spoiler heavy territory with the narrative of what's going on here. Then I'm going to give you some thoughts and opinions on what this book is, what is absolutely amazing about it, and what is not so good. So, first things first, the Daughters of Khaine are outlined at the very start of the book. You get to hear about the fact that the Soul Wars is raging, the Necroquake happened, and, you know, the Stormcast Eternals are spread very thin. All of the factions are heavily involved in this war against the undead. You've had Catacross being unleashed on the realms and subsequently being destroyed by Archaon. You've got all this crazy stuff happening, and the Daughters of Khaine, they're doing okay. You know, they're slightly protected in their weird realm of shadows, but Morathi herself always has an agenda. And in fact, this is something I want to talk about, because every faction in Age of Sigmar has kind of a secret agenda, like an identity quest that's really central to who they are and what they're about. If you think about the Stormcast Eternals, they're trying to solve the problem of the reforging process. They're trying to vanquish evil, you know, a bit generic, but it is what it is. You've got the Ideneth who are trying to break their curse. You've got the Fire Slayers who are trying to collect all the Urgold because they think by collecting it they'll be able to revive their god. You've got the Daughters of Khaine who are trying to bring back, well, the god of murder himself, Khaine, and or so they believe. But yeah, you get this really good outline to what's going on. And something that I find amazing about this book, which seems very kind of unusual, is that every part of the quest of what the Daughters of Khaine are about comes to a fulfillment in this book, and it's immensely satisfying if you are a fan of the Daughters of Khaine. You get to find out everything to do with Khaine, whether he can or can't or will or won't come back. You know, if you know this story, you know the fact that Morathi basically has all of the Daughters of Khaine duped. She wants them to believe that she's for the people and she's bringing back Khaine, whereas secretly all of the things they're collecting up and all the rituals they're performing to do with bringing back Khaine are actually all about herself, and it's all about her trying to empower herself to become a goddess. Her son's a god, Tyrion and Teclis are gods, Elariel's now a god, and she wants to be a god too. So she is easily the best character in all of Age of Sigmar. So yeah, we get the outline of what's going on, and I have to say as well, whilst we're talking about the Soul Wars and things happening, from a narrative perspective, we've had the Realm Gate Wars, which were really epic. We had the build up to the Soul Wars, which was equally incredible, and then this edition, the narrative kind of just plateaued a little bit, and it's not to say that it's been disappointing, it's just kind of been in stasis whilst it's waiting for the next big things to start happening. We've had the updates to all the battle tomes and the things like that, but it's been waiting for these incredible kind of landmark moments, and I really think that This particular book, the narrative is going to be remembered by me as one of the highlights of all of Age of Sigmar. It feels like everything has been coming together to this point. All of the character building, all of those moments, it all feels like it was worth the payoff when something like this comes out. So the storyline starts in the 8 points, which is the kind of hub world, if you will, of the realms. It sits in a space kind of in the middle, and it connects to all of the other realms. And it's a strategically very important place, and Archaon has taken over it for himself. Now, it turns out that all of the realms have a substance known as Realmstone, and in the 8 points at a place called Varanthax's Moor, if I'm saying that right, there is a particular Realmstone substance called Varanite. And it turns out that this stuff is particularly potent and particularly powerful. So right down in the heart here, underground, they are mining the stuff, and Morathi finds out about it. Archaon is using the stuff to forge these incredibly powerful weapons, but she has her own ideas about what it can be used for. Now, she also finds out, because she has spies here in the 8 points, that this particular Realmstone substance is going to be used by Archaon to try and break through the gates that seal Azir, the heavenly realm, shut. So she is going to use this situation to her advantage. She approaches Sigmar and says, look, if he succeeds in this quest, you're going to have the entire force of Chaos and Archaon bursting into Azir, and the heavenly realm is going to fall. Okay, that's a battle that you probably at this stage cannot win. So what she proposes is that the Daughters of Khaine and the Stormcast Eternals kind of band together and attack the 8 points. They come to this place, and one big force of Stormcast Eternals will attack above ground, while she and a smaller force of Sacrosanct go below ground to either destroy the mines or just remove all of the Varanite. But secretly, obviously, she just wants that Varanite for herself. Sigmar reluctantly agrees, and they start this absolutely epic assault of the 8 points. I think they go through the Genesis Gate, which is in the Realm of Life, and unfortunately the Sylvaneth don't get involved in this fight, but yeah, basically carnage ensues, obviously, with this enormous Stormcast battle host entering through the Genesis Gate. Now, she specifically requests the anvils of the Heldenhammer, and she does that for a very good reason. Those are the black-clad Stormcast Eternals who live in this place here, Anvilgard. And she says that she wants them specifically because she's fought with them in the past. You know, they've got this connection, and they're particularly effective with their kind of defensive, offensive style of battling. They're very good with their shield walls, and they should be able to buy time at the top of the ground while she's kind of traveling underneath to get this Varanite substance. So meanwhile, her scouts in the Scourge Privateers, they're sailing the seas, and they've been searching for a particularly powerful artifact known as the Akarian Lantern. And yeah, the Idoneth have hidden this away deep underground in some sort of a trench or something at the bottom of the ocean. And when they discover the location of it, she sends in her Khainite Shadow Stalkers to go and steal it. Now, obviously, that's going to really annoy the Idoneth. So there is some retribution there for that. Right, so the battle commences in the 8 points. Slaanesh gets involved. They're kind of like a side player only because they come back into it later. And yeah, whilst the Stormcast Eternals are fighting above ground, she heads down to the mines with this tiny little group of Stormcast, and that is where her plan comes into play. Now, she betrays the Stormcast Eternals who are down with her in the mines. She essentially leaves them all to be slaughtered by the Slaves to Darkness, while she collects all of the Varanite up for herself and then makes a hasty retreat. Now, it's clever, they've thought through the plot holes here, because obviously if any one of those Stormcast Eternals died, they would warp back up to Azir on the lightning bolts, and they would warn Sigmar of her treachery, and then he would maybe be able to intervene with her plans. But there's some clever narrative stuff going on where the Daughters of Khaine are poisoning Stormcast Eternals so they become paralyzed, they don't die, and on top of that, some weird magic in the 8 points means that death for a Stormcast Eternal there is permanent. Their souls don't go back up to Azir. So yeah, that was a nice little touch in the story. But she runs straight back to Ulgu, the Realm of Shadow, and we actually have a nice map, here we go, of Ulgu for the first time, which is very cool. She heads straight here to Hagnar, her fortress, and begins a ritual. She has placed all of these towers around Ulgu, which she's placed all of these sacrificial victims in, ready for a ritual to commence. But the Idoneth, knowing that she's stolen their lantern, they decide to invade the Realm of Shadows. And it's kind of like the D-Day, I guess, of Age of Sigmar, where you have this enormous, massive scale Idoneth invasion from the sea. You've got the Daughters of Khaine lined up to try and hold them back, whilst Morathi's in her temple carrying out the ritual, desperately hoping she can finish it before her forces are overrun and her temple is sieged. But yeah, to kind of help her out, not intentionally, the Slaanesh host that I mentioned earlier, they end up invading behind the Idoneth. So there's this enormous bloodbath of basically Daughters of Khaine with the Scourge Privateers fighting the Idoneth in the middle, and then the Slaanesh force turning up behind as well. So right, this is where Morathi begins her ritual. She starts off by killing all of the sacrifices, and all of their souls are fed straight to Slaanesh through some powerful magic that she's doing. With her giant cauldron that she's filled with various unfortunate people's blood, she starts to forge a connection between the contents of her cauldron and the stomach of Slaanesh. So this is where the lantern comes into play. She jumps into the cauldron. She uses the lantern to basically draw souls from Slaanesh into herself. At this point, Slaanesh is kind of either unaware or powerless to do anything about it, because obviously, number one, he's chained up, and number two, all of those sacrifices she killed, those souls are fed to him, but they were all agents of Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Khorne. So, you know, feeding him the souls of the other Chaos God followers are souls that he does not want in his body, and they're kind of making him delirious. But she uses that lantern, she draws these really powerful souls into herself, and at this exact moment, the Idoneth managed to break into her chamber. Volturnos sees the cauldron, gives it a good old smack with his sword, makes everything explode. He's blasted across the chamber and hits the wall, and unfortunately for him, he was just too late. Morathi's ritual was a success, and yeah, she's basically risen to become a goddess. Now, in her shadow form, she absolutely wrecks Volturnos. I think Deep Mane, his steed, gets destroyed, and she's about to kill him where he is utterly defeated, like he is at her mercy totally, but she lets him live and says, actually, it would really be beneficial if the Daughters of Khaine and the Idoneth form an alliance. Here you go, have your lantern back, and not only that, you can have some souls that had been trapped by Slaanesh, and they're really important souls to the Idoneth. I guess we'll have to wait and see whether they kind of take up that connection, but at the very least, where the Idoneth are not very emotional, they're kind of logical, calculated beings, they are prepared to at least hear her out. Now, that's the exciting part of the story where she becomes a goddess, and in fact, just look at this gorgeous piece of artwork where Morathi is being reborn as a goddess fighting Volturnos. But the final part of the storyline is where she leads an attack on Anvilgard, which is the city in the Realm of Fire. Now, really, we don't know why she did this, we don't know the true motives yet, but basically she decides to attack Anvilgard, and by the end she's defeated all of the Stormcast there. You'll remember I said earlier that she requested the anvils of the Heldenhammer. Well, they are garrisoned at this particular place, Anvilgard. So really, when she was requesting them and having them sent to the 8 points, she was just trying to weaken the city. And yeah, she ends up using the elves from Anvilgard to tell turn on the city itself. There's this massive battle where, again, the Stormcasts are mostly being poisoned rather than killed, so they can't go and warn Sigmar, and she ends up taking over the city. Now, obviously, this is a very bold move, and it's her fairly openly coming out against Sigmar. So she'd better hope whatever her plan is that it's a solid one and that there was a very good reason for doing this, because that is an enemy that you really would not want to be making. So yeah, that is the narrative in a nutshell. It's absolutely amazing. You know, I've only really scratched the surface and given you the overall details. There are so many extra twists and turns, so many extra characters in there, so many different parts of the plots that are really good. But for me, the narrative was easily a 10 out of 10. I absolutely loved it. Now, onto the rules. There is a campaign in here that is a narrative campaign that allows you basically to reenact everything that you have just read throughout that campaign. There are rules for the different realms of battle you go to. So you've got the Akshi rules, you've got Olgu, and you also have rules for the 8 points. And then you basically have the 6 different battle plans that allow you to reenact all of the key moments from the campaign. Now, one thing I do really like about the campaign is the fact that it kind of has semi-branching paths. Not entirely, but you know, if a character, say Volturnos, dies in one of the battles, you can't use them again, and it tells you what you have to do in that case. So there's some fun little quirks to the battles. But yeah, there are 6 of them. They are quite varied. They have quite fun objectives, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about those in a second, because they actually also have one of the things I don't particularly like about this book. Right, now the updated War Scrolls, I was mainly focusing on reading about the Daughters of Khaine here, because obviously they're the faction that I care the most about. The most striking change obviously is Morathi, who is now a goddess, and that's reflected in her points. I think she's now something like a whopping, 600 points to take Morathi. But yeah, the great thing about Morathi is now you take both models at the same time. They're kind of like the same soul connected together, but in 2 different bodies. And there's some really cool rules where if you send in morathi-khaine, the kind of on foot version of her, as she takes wounds, you take them off of the Shadow Queen instead, and she has some insane powerful magic. I mean, all of these War Scrolls I assume are going to be updated onto the website, so I don't really need to go through them that thoroughly. But needless to say, I kind of like them going down the route of making her super powerful and costing an awful lot of points and having her as a goddess, because it just makes her feel more unique and interesting as kind of my favorite character there's probably ever been in Age of Sigmar. But a spell where she can just do D6 mortal wounds is mental. I can't actually really remember what her old War Scrolls were like. I have them on my phone. I'll have to reread them after this video. But either way, she looks like a fairly powerful damage dealer. You know, you've got her Shadow Queen form that's all about dealing damage, and then her on foot version that's all about sorcery. And there's some serious survivability with the Shadow Queen. She still has that kind of Heart of Khaine ability where you can only take 3 wounds off her in a turn, which means she's going to last quite a while. But then whilst you're going through the campaign, there are various different battalions that you need to take with you as part of the armies, and those are all listed in here as well. My favorite one is probably this Shadow Host here, because it has some of the old Dark Elves basically, which represent fairly decent value for money. But yeah, you've got battle traits, artifacts of power, updated rules for Stormcast Eternals. I'm not going to lie, I haven't particularly looked at the Stormcast Eternal or the Ideneth stuff at the moment. But again, more updates to War Scrolls, another battalion there, and some points changes. So right, this brings me on to the thing that I'm kind of a little bit sketchy on. And that is, if we go back to some of these battle plans, the sizes of the armies that you need for each side are absolutely massive. You know, it says here you need 16 units of Stormcast Eternals, or 12 units of Darkling Covens, or Scourge Privateers, or Order Serpentis. You know, the army sizes are absolutely massive. Now, if you go right back to the start, to be fair, it does say you can use alternative armies. If you don't have the right units, you can use those too. But here we go. On my iPad, I made a quick table last night to show you the absolute minimum you would need for each army. And the Daughters of Khaine basically are going to need Morathi. That's an £85 model. You're going to need a minimum of 1 Cauldron of Blood. You need 16 other units. You need to make sure that at least one of those is a Bloodrack Medusa or one of the new Iron Scales models. The Stormcast Eternals, you need 2 Sacrosanct units. You need 12 units overall, so 2 of them could have been Sacrosanct. 1 has to be a Lord Veritant. You need Gryph-hounds, Judicators, Castigators. Slaves to Darkness need 16 units, 1 Gaunt Summoner, Chaos War Shrine. You need 3 Gorebeast Chariots. You know, there is an awful lot of models here, and the idea is that you are looking at a 2-person campaign where you each own sort of 2 armies. You've got Stormcast Eternals and Daughter of Khaine essentially against the Slaves to Darkness and Idoneth Deepkin, with some other stuff involved as well. So that's my main drawback. If you were going to buy the exact armies as they were laid out in this book, you would be spending thousands of pounds, literally thousands of pounds. It would be incredibly expensive. But nevertheless, the campaign is so ambitious, it's so well structured, it's so well thought out, that what I would do, and this is what I really am intending on doing, is adapting these, using these as a starting point. I mean, these are narrative campaigns after all, tailoring them kind of more to my budget level. But yeah, I mean, even me with all of the models that I own, I probably don't have enough to fill out anything except maybe the Stormcast Eternals in this book. So I think it's just going to be a case of having to scale things down, use less models, maybe proxy some in. It's not as fun. I mean, saying that you can use other armies is all very well and good, but if you're following the rise of the Daughters of Khaine and half your army is Stormcast Eternals, but you're meant to be fighting Stormcast Eternals, it doesn't quite work. But yeah, that's my one reservation of the book. Otherwise, I would say from a narrative perspective, which is what this book really should be about, it's an absolute masterpiece. It's fantastic. It's well written. It makes me love the Daughters of Khaine all over again, and I really do wish, and maybe I should make another video on it, that they fix a few things with the Daughters of Khaine in terms of battle line requirements and other additional units. But I guess that's a whole different video. But yeah, that is basically my thoughts on this book. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know if it's something you're going to buy. Like I said, I really do love this. I love the campaign. I love it for its ambition. I love it for how well it plays through exactly what you've read. I'm just not a fan of the fact that I would have to spend so much in order to carry it out. And if you did find someone who was willing to spend all of that money on the 2 armies, would they be happy to play through this more than once? I'm not entirely sure. I'd happily play through it loads of times. Whether they would want to is another question entirely. But right, I'm aware this video is getting quite long. I'm going to leave it here. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. And I will see you guys really soon in the next video.